comments? Okay, we're recording. So yeah, I'll let you handle it from here, Rags, and if any of the chairs have information they want to share, go ahead.
Okay, great. So I guess I'll start with Steve Engel. Do you want to talk about discussion group, please?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Loud and clear.
Last meeting we had, the discussion group, we didn't have a video that went out to YouTube. So I hope you got the links that we sent out to you to kind of follow up on it. The next one is February 12th. Is about bulb settings, when to use them, how to use them, and exactly what is it going to do for you. And then we're going to follow up in the same meeting with still life and different kinds of lighting to use for still life, which will be useful for maybe portraiture. I use some of the same lighting that still life that I do out in the field for wildflowers. So I think you'll find that to be very useful.
Okay,
Great.
thank you. Amy, do you have any updates on Meetup? You might be muted, Amy.
Oh, there we go. Hi, no, I don't have any planned right at this moment, but I surely will.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And then I didn't see Anne. Is
I'm
Anne
here.
Okay,
I'm
Anne, do you want
here.
to talk about critique night, please?
Yes, our next critique night is February 7th. It's a Monday night at 7 o'clock, and the assignment is Faceless Portraits. And Carol Glierlich and what's her name?
Rochelle Starr.
Rochelle Starr, couldn't think of her first name, will be our panelist. That's all I got, gang.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to
Great.
introduce our presenter for tonight. His name is Steve Jessmore. Steve has a 30-year career as a photojournalist and 5-time Michigan Photographer of the Year. He's also a Robert F. Kennedy Photojournalism Awardee. He's
Wow.
won numerous awards in Michigan and national and international photojournalism awards, which you'll get to get a taste of that tonight. He'll be talking about some of his photojournalism background. And he's primarily focused on community and journalism and storytelling while working in Saginaw, Flint, and Myrtle Beach. In August of 2018, he stepped away from his position as photographer of Central Michigan University, which is where I got to know him when I was working at CMU, and got married and moved to Grand Rapids before becoming a freelance photographer. His focus as a freelancer photographer is on higher education and storytelling photography. Since the onset of COVID, Steve has become an avid outdoor photographer with a love for all wildlife, but especially birds. And he does most of his photography along the Torch River. In 2021, 2 of his bird images swept the professional division of the National 2021 Audubon Photography Contest, winning first place and honorable mention. So I think we've got a very rich program tonight, and I think you're going to enjoy it, and lots to learn here. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Steve. Thank you, Steve, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, and I'm sorry we can't all meet in person. I was really looking forward to that, and meeting all you guys. And most of my photography is done up by you, so I love Traverse City. I love Boardman Lake, and I love the Torch and Arcadia, and all the areas up there. I'm just going to start rolling through some of my pictures. Rags pretty much told you a good synopsis about me, but I started out actually in pre-med or pre-dentistry in college, and all my life I grew up around photography. My father owned Saginaw Photo in Saginaw, Michigan. It was a huge Kodak wholesale stockhouse dealer, and So I grew up around photography. My dad did 16mm photography when I was young. He did, ironically, birds and the Everglades, things like that. Never really thought about it till recently. But he was into that until he had kids and kind of stopped doing it and then just sold cameras. But I worked there. I did a lot of concert photography in high school. I took a lot of art classes. I loved art. I loved photography, but I really thought I'd go into something else. Ended up falling into photojournalism in college. I took a lot of the sciences and all the classes I needed to take and for pre-dent, pre-med, and just didn't like it. And ended up landing at the newspaper at Central Michigan University and ended up in photojournalism. So, you know, pretty much what I've done all my life is photograph people and tell stories and for publications. And it's kind of a different kind of photography in some ways where each one of your pictures, you know, has to tell a story. Mainly, it has to be worth the space they're going to print it in the newspaper. You know, social media, we have so much space to do so many pictures. If we want to publish 40 or 50 pictures, you know, I think I've had one story in my life that I got to publish 50 pictures in the newspaper in 40 years, you know, so if I could just, you know, it was always shooting for that one picture all the time, you know, for the most part, maybe some supplementary pictures to go along with it. But this was a house fire. Some people died, the investigation into it. We had to cover, you know, everything that happened in the community, which I loved. I loved being part of a community. I loved telling pictures. Just, it was never the same day in and day out. You know, one minute I could be in a president of the bank's office, and the next minute I might be literally in a crack house, and the next minute I might be out with horse-drawn, you know, farming, you know, going on, or just regular farming. Saginaw was a great community. It was my hometown, and that's where I worked 15 years, my first 15 years after I got out of college and got the job. So I loved music. I photographed a lot of music and, you know, centered things around music, but just, you know, again, trying to tell stories within my community that would help change the community for a better. A lot of times this was in the worst neighborhood in the city of Saginaw. We went in, it was called Tab Zone 108, and we went and tried to talk to people about living there. You know, first day of school, we covered all those things and tried to do it in a new way every year, you know, and we photograph people, and I like to find real pictures of people being themselves and, you know, to let their personality shine through. This was the world champion pipe smoker. He was in Flint. He had Paul's Pipe Shop, but he was like, I don't know, 7-time world champion or something like that. And so just to let people be themselves, we cover a lot of spot news, you know, just the fender benders, no one hurt, but here this young guy after school had to explain to the police officer what he did and why it wasn't his fault, you know. Fires, you know, festival after festival after festival, all the time, every Friday night, every whatever, we would go. And, you know, they were important in our community, so we would try to go and make fresh pictures. This was a little girl that disappeared in Flint, vigil for her. Her name was Sierra, but she was abducted and killed. So we had to go into those situations and delicately tell those stories and, you know, just to stick cameras in people's faces, which is really difficult at times, but to do it in a way that wasn't objectionable to them. I got to know Sierra's mom very well. We covered the whole investigation, and she welcomed me at all the events. You know, but you had to make something out of nothing. A lot of times it was the day before, and you're trying to tell that the festival is going to be there tomorrow. So you're there trying to make pictures out of anything, you know, out of the setup. You know, but people allowed us into their lives. You know, this was a woman who lost her first baby because of lack of prenatal care. They caught what was wrong the first time. They caught it, you know, a few months into her pregnancy. She was able to have a full-term pregnancy and had the baby, but allowed me to be in the delivery room and to help tell that story. So we got to go into a lot of different places, and, you know, people trusted us, which I really appreciated. One of my favorite things to do was tell stories, and I don't have time or space here to tell these stories, but this was a story that won the Robert F. Kennedy Award for coverage of the disadvantaged. But I followed a leader dog puppy all the way for 17 months from, it was in an elementary school in Carleton, Michigan. It ended up staying there for a year. It ended up from there going down to
Rochester.
Yep, and spent 3-4 months down there. Got hooked up with a blind person, ended up becoming the eyes and trying to go here. I don't know if I'm gonna hang on. I'm sorry. Eyes and for a blind person. This was the final picture of the story that ran, but his name was Carl for Carleton Elementary School, the dog. Gordon was a ex-motorcycling minister who lost his eyesight, was matched with Carl and became the eyes and ears. I self-initiated this story. I followed it in between assignments with my regular job at the Saginaw News. I think I only, put in 2 times to actually be there at certain times for the first year. Just whenever I had free time, I'd pop into the school and follow it through. But we ended up publishing 52 pictures in a special section that documented the whole life of the dog. This is the kind of thing that I sort of made a name for myself doing, were these stories and projects. But one of the things I also loved doing was sports. And I photographed a lot of high profile and a lot of just really community sports, weekend tournaments, that sort of thing. This was in Frankenmuth, where I lived when I worked in Flint and Saginaw, but just a weekend tournament. I got to follow Tiger during his years where he was really tearing it up. His first probably 50, I think he had his 50th win in Flint. Every year I would lead the coverage of the Buick Open for the Flint Journal. And we had, I would have 8 to 10 other photographers out there beside myself. And we would cover the tournament for about 8 days from Sunday to Monday. And we would try to find different ways of shooting it and telling the stories. A lot of details, a lot of just hopefully we took you into places you couldn't see, like if you were there were so many people, or just different angles and different stories. I don't have it here, but one of my favorite stories I did, I walked up to every golfer 2 different years during practice rounds and asked them if I could see their golf ball and drop it on the ground and photograph the marks on it that they put. Every golfer had to mark their golf ball a certain way. And I did whole photo pages of just the golf balls of every single golfer with the little marks that they used. And some of them had crosses because they were religious, or 7 dots because they were gamblers, or their initials, or just whatever. But it was really a fun thing that I love to do every year. Did a lot of different kinds of sports, a lot of different features. We oftentimes didn't have assignments, so we had to go out and initiate our own assignments, like the surfing. This was an assignment I initiated in Flint. Chris Bird ended up becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. His dad was an Olympic boxer, the coach for the Olympic team one year. We did not go to I think it was in Europe or somewhere, but we didn't go to cover them, and I wasn't in Flint yet. They were really upset with the Flint Journal for not covering them during the Olympics. I had to sit down at a table with them and tell them that I would treat them right if you let me cover them. And so I was able to go to the championship fight with Evander Holyfield and get ringside, and Don King, and it was really fun. But I'd love to do this kind of stuff my whole life. It was really a fun thing to do, to sit between the benches at the Red Wings game, or cover the Crim road race in Flint every year. I led coverage for that too. We had a 10-mile road race through Flint that we published special sections with the next day. I miss newspapers tremendously like that. I don't know about all you guys, but I was a reader. I thought it was a great vehicle for the community. I thought we were great watchdogs for the community. And I really, valued that relationship. And so these sorts of, just to document what life was like, all those people coming into Flint, one Saturday a year. Pistons, I shot a ton of Pistons and Bad Boys and all that through the years. Barry Sanders. back here, what was really fun, I mean, you think about it now, I can't even imagine going back and shooting 300 pictures at this football game and that's it. We would shoot 10 rolls of film. You had to go back and process it all and edit it all and try to find the best pictures and print it, hand print it and all that. But if I shot 300 pictures at a Lions game, that would really be something. And it was manual. This was with a manual focus 300-2.8 and very zigzag, back and forth. And it was just a whole different time. But I think it really cemented my skills and my appreciation for some of the other technology that's out now. I went all the way, first coming into newspapers with black and white film. That's it, just shooting black and white film, to shooting color positive film, to shooting color negative film, and having the positive film drum scanned, on a drum that would take those 4 color separations into the paper, to scanning my negatives, to finally getting digital cameras. And now it's just crazy, mirrorless, beautiful gear that I don't know how it can get any better. But I had sessions. I used to shoot spring training for Booth newspapers. I'd go down a few times, but Cecil Fielder, I had to talk him into sitting in the middle of all those baseballs, and I had 15 minutes to shoot that. And it took me 10 minutes to talk him into it. And he actually, he came out to the outfield and looked at it and said, you want me to sit there? No way. And I said, come on, Cecil, I got the ladder set up. I'm going to get up there. It's going to look really great. And he goes, well, you go sit in it and give me your camera. And he climbed to the top of the ladder and he looked through my camera. He said, oh my God, this is great. He went down and sat in it, and then I got the picture. But I do have the other picture too, but I don't have it here. I couldn't find it today, but he's got my Leica M6 up on the top of the ladder looking through it. So, but I was there in the World Series in '84. That was one of my first big assignments. I sat on the first baseline when Gibson hit his home run. I was there at the end of Tiger Stadium. I actually spent the last 7 games there. These are some of the photos I shot the last 7 games. Shot this with a helicopter. But just, trying to remember the iconic situations, like this picture was my thinking back to when I was a kid and going there. I can still remember when I was 7 or 8 going there. And this is about, I don't know, seriously, probably 300-400 exposures on one frame of film. I just kept double exposing it, very underexposed. And the only things that picked up light, I read somewhere where you could do this. The only thing that picked up light were where it compounded and they stayed still. And then I did one flash exposure at the end when I saw the kid walk through, and not posed at all, just waited for a kid to come through like I really wanted it. And this is one of my favorite pictures from that whole shoot. But this is the last 7th inning stretch and the last pitch, the last out right there at Tiger Stadium. And this was actually the first game at Comerica Park. And I shot, normal color and everything, but I thought it'd be kind of cool to shoot like old time black and white sepia, with a panoramic camera, which I did in film. So the journalism to me was a wonderful, it just gave me a lot of skills. It gave me a lot of ethics. I think that, about not posing things and respect for my subjects. And every assignment I always thought was important is the next assignment. There was never anything that was treated more important by me than the one I was on. And I don't think I ever would blow anything off, where I would just, that assignment where I was there for that person, that was gonna be the most important thing in their 15 minutes, and I had to try to make that picture look really nice for them and them to look good, or to tell the story right. So I always had a lot of respect for that and still do. I did a column in Flint. I got this idea. I got tired of being in Saginaw. It was 15 years, my hometown. I just really wanted to go somewhere different. And I was headed to South Carolina, I thought, and one of my friends said, well, don't go there, come to Flint. And I said, come to Flint, and okay, this was like 99. And it really wasn't, a wonderful place. Neither was Saginaw, and in places, but I loved them both. And so I went and had an interview with the publisher, and I sat down, publisher, editor, and the editor made small talk, and we sat down at the table and he said, why in the hell would you ever want to come to Flint? Murder, rape, robbery. We're on the list of every bad thing in the world. Why would you ever come to this godforsaken place? And I'm like, well, it really took me aback. And I said, well, you want me to take pictures? Number one, I was doing a lot of editing, and I said, I'd really like to be a photographer again, but it hit me right then and there. I said, I bet there's like 93% good people here instead of 94. It's all how you look at it. And I said, what you just said is not the way I'm going to look at Flint. And so I had the idea, and I did this photo column for 5 years in Flint, where I got, you guys my age or older will remember these days, but the Sunday paper was the paper. And I asked for just a little, one picture way back in the feature section. The editor gave me a full page in the A section. He gave me page 5 every Sunday to do whatever I wanted to do. And that was some pretty prime real estate. And I came up with this column called Sense of Community. If you want to look at them, they're on my website. You can look at them closer, but I did verbatim text with people telling why they still had hope for Flint. And they did grassroots things that tried to make Flint a better place to live because they lived there. So these are just a few of the pictures that I did and a few of the people I featured. But it was a photo column, and it was just a wonderful experience. And I met so many great people and so many people that loved Flint and didn't have, didn't really think it was, in its grave yet. And Michael Moore was there at this period of time, doing all the Roger and Me movies. And so we really had a bad reputation, but there was just a ton of good there. And it really wasn't hard to find. So I found unique people giving back in unique ways. And I did 175 over the course of 5 years. But this was, to me, the best thing I ever did in my life, just the most satisfying. And, really, it just allowed me to be part of the community and really feel like I was highlighting the best in the community. From Flint, I went to Myrtle Beach, 2008, when we had the big crash. That the newsroom in Flint went from 130 people down to probably 30 people. Newspapers really took a dive. The internet was starting, all that. And I went to Myrtle Beach and stayed there for about 6 years. The same thing happened there. The staff, I had 6 photographers when I went down as director of photography, and I only had 2 when I left in 2013. And I went back to my alma mater. I figured it was a great way to use my journalism skills with people and to get maybe more creative and to learn things like branding and just, again, another community with college. But this is what I do full time now for the most part. I photograph, I don't photograph full time for CMU anymore. I was their full-time photographer for 6 years. I did a book for them. I did their website. I did athletic events. I did websites, brochures, but I was the only full-time photographer on campus. So we had headshots. I followed the president around a lot. Just did everything that you can think of with what a university would need or what you would see on a website, learning, just showing off the campus. Most days I started before my shift out when the nice light was there. And most days I ended up there when the nice light was there before I went home. Most years of my life when I worked in Flint and Saginaw and even Myrtle Beach, I had over a half-hour drive home. At CMU, I had a 1.5-minute ride home. It was just wonderful. I could work till whatever and just get right home and, and start my evening. But it was a wonderful experience. I love photographing people. I love being kind of that, people say a fly on the wall. I always say like a spider in the web, because I'll sit way back and just watch and watch and watch. And then if I see something, I'll kind of pounce in there and shoot some pictures and then get back again. And, most of the time, if you look, people aren't very aware of me. They get pretty used to me being around, and I don't try to attract much attention. I don't pose anything. Technically, for all of this, I shoot available light, most of it. You can probably tell. I never shot raw files until I went freelance. I shoot raw files now, but this was all on JPEG. Every one of these files, mixed lighting, nowhere near as high megapixels as we have now. I had two EOS 1D Mark, I don't know what they are. I think they were called 1D Mark, if that makes sense. Two of the high, those were the cameras I used at CMU. I am not a technical person at all. I'm a user, definitely a user. I just like to have it as simple as I can get it when I shoot. I do end up lighting, frequently nowadays. I don't love it, but I can do it. But I would much rather just sort of, this is one light, and I would rather grab onto whatever the available light is and maybe add a supplementary light like this. I slowed my shutter down enough to, this is a posed picture. They told me at CMU I was not a journalist anymore, so I could pose pictures, I could set up pictures, but I still tried not to do that. But with a lot of times with education and pamphlets, you had to, but shot a lot of really low shutter speeds to grab that light, like that red, light from the laser, and then just one light from the side. I shoot, this was a dance installation, they called it, a art installation around campus. They went to different places and danced. But again, I just let them do their thing and photographed it. And I really enjoy that. We had a lot of Native American events at CMU. We were the Chippewas. So I photographed a whole lot of Chippewas through the years, from the early 80s till currently. I still do a bit, but I shot a lot of powwows, a lot of Chippewa things. And I would go to football games, but I would never shoot action. I would just have to shoot everything around the action to use for, again, pamphlets, brochures, social media, Facebook. I would post galleries from a football game with 100, 150 pictures that night yet, after I shot a game. So it wasn't unusual to work, easily a 12, 14-hour day on a football Saturday, shooting pictures. And all of them didn't have to be up and ready to go, but the ones for social media did. And I think that's why I shot JPEGs a lot, because they were, sort of there already. I didn't have to convert, and I could just edit out and do a little bit of toning and go. But one of the things over and over, same thing with journalism, year after year after year, you shot the same events. You had to find new ways to do things. Game after game after game, I would try to shoot the same things, but in a different way. The drum major was an iconic, just thing that we would use in a lot of pamphlets and brochures and everywhere. But to try to find different angles, I had pretty much, I could go anywhere. Nobody would say anything to me. And, again, that whole spider in a web thing, if this picture, I'd go out, for 20 seconds and then I'd be back off the field again. And this was pregame. So it didn't matter. But the same thing with this, 10 seconds out as the team got ready for the tip off and then back again. But I do enjoy higher ed. I thought it would be a great niche to do once I got remarried and moved to Grand Rapids. First time I've ever worked for myself. And so this is what I've been doing, for day rates and for, different colleges and universities. I shoot a lot for Grand Rapids Community College and Alma College and CMU and Michigan State and really whoever hires me. I do some editorial work for different magazines or businesses too. And that's what I do for a living. But I don't know, does anybody have any questions before I get into this? Now, this is probably why you're all coming. Rags, anything that you want to know, or am I doing okay?
No, this is fantastic. We will pause. I did put, if you're on mute, you can unmute yourself if you have a question. I don't have anybody in the chat. If you're not muted, please mute in case there's any stray background noises while he's presenting. So does anybody have any questions?
No
I have a
question, but I
question.
sure have a, oh, I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Tom Haxby.
What is your go-to lens for most of your shots?
for wildlife or for what? For like
For
this?
your photojournalism shots that you've been showing up.
My kit that I carry day in and day out, I have always been a zoom guy. So as soon as zooms came out at 2.8 apertures back in whenever that was, I used to carry a bag with, 7, 8 prime lenses and 2 bodies and it, a Vividar 283 flash or whatever flash, some kind of flash. And as soon as the 2.8 zooms came out, I have always been a 2.8 zoom guy. So I use it routinely a 24 to 70 2.8 zoom and a 80 to 200 2-point zoom. And what I really think has been what I've always enjoyed, I used Nikon the first 25 years. I got switched to Canon at Myrtle Beach, and then at CMU, I got switched to Canon, and I got a grant in Flint that I got a whole set of Canon gear. So I kind of got locked into Canon when they went full frame. But what I really like to do is carry, like with Canon, a 5D and a 7D, where I had the APS-C chip and the full frame chip. Then all of a sudden, if I put my 80 to 200 on that, routinely I would carry it on the smaller chip, the 7D, because it would be equivalent to like a 120 to 300, approximately. And so it gave me like a 300 to 8 just with an 80-200 zoom effectively. And vice versa, that I could use if I needed like a 80 to 200, I could put it on the 5D, which was full frame. So I like doing that, and I still do that, at times with cameras. But most of the time I'm working with 2 full frame bodies now, 80 to 200, 24 to 70. I carry a wider zoom, like a 16 to 35 f4. And then I have a 100 to 400 that I use a lot for, especially, we're talking freelance right now. For my freelance work at colleges, I use the 100 to 400 a lot for the feature type photos. For the football games, I really shooting that crowd stuff, and the zooms are just invaluable to me.
I believe Mary Picard had a question as well.
Yeah, not a question, just a comment. Just the feeling of these pictures, it's amazing. You can feel they're very expressive.
Thank you.
Really
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, I am. Like I said, I love to photograph people, and this is what's going to make this so weird. Everything you're going to see. So 99% of my pictures all my life had people in them. And, most of us got to March of 2020. It seems so long ago now, but, I was freelancing. I came over here, and my wife, Brenda, we decided to get married. I came over here, quit CMU because, it was an hour and a half, 2 hours away. And she said, just come over here and do something. Just don't sit around, don't do nothing. Figure out something to do. The money will follow. Figure out a niche, and just do it. My wife's in IT. She has, a great job, and, another 5-6 years to work. And so I knew I would do some kind of photography, and I thought I really liked college photography and I really liked journalism, but to be really, really honest, like the journalism assignments don't pay, and the higher ed assignments paid. And so I thought, I'm going to push more towards that direction and just see if I can get some different colleges to hire me. And so that's what I did. And, it worked out really well. In 2018, I came over, I got pretty busy in the fall. 2019, I had over 100 invoices, my first full year of, different colleges. I'm working basically 2-3 days a week. It was a wonderful, wonderful role. I got on this doing lots of different pictures. I wasn't getting burned out, but I wasn't doing any other photography. And then 2020 came, and that spring I was pretty busy, and I was picking up some more diverse accounts like Goodwills and annual report stuff. And all of a sudden, March 8th, it just like my phone rang off the hook. And, this COVID thing was kind of happening. And everything for the rest of the year got canceled for me on like March 8th, right at the end of that week. It just really took off. We had been in Washington, D.C. the weekend before, and there was some talk about it, and then all of a sudden it hit. So I was left with an awful lot of time, and I didn't know what I was going to do, just like probably most of us, had some kind of changes in our life or our work life, or you work from home, you do whatever. I couldn't work from home really and do anything that I was doing at that point. And so I kind of wallowed around a little bit, and I thought, well, what am I going to do with this time? Maybe I'll watch some videos, and I'm going to call some photographers, which I did, who I respected, and said, how do you do that? And, kind of like we're doing tonight, just picking somebody's brain and saying, I really like this. What do you use? How do you get that kind of tonality, whatever. So I did that a little bit, and I bought some, how-to videos. I want to get better at lighting. So I bought some of those videos. I still haven't opened them up, by the way. And, I just couldn't get into it. And about, I don't know, maybe like a month or so into it, my wife sat me down. She's like, I'm going to read this because it's perfect. She's like, Steve, God put us on this earth for who knows how long. You have to live life every day to the fullest, make every day count as if it was your last. This is a gift of time. Don't waste it. Do what you always wanted to do. It was like, I was just taken aback, and I was like, oh my God, like, what do I want to do? What have I always wanted to do? Like, I have no idea. I thought I always was doing it. I love what I do. I made my living my whole life doing photography, and all of a sudden I wasn't doing photography, and I just didn't know what to do. And so I thought about that, and I cleared out the backyard, the trees in the woods that fell, and I sanded the deck, and I'm still thinking about this, like, what do I want to do? And one morning I was going downstairs to watch videos, and I walked past the slider, and I looked out on the back porch, and I started seeing like all these birds. I'm like, whoa, there's just so many different kinds of birds. It must have been April, May, somewhere in there. And I thought, I got nothing to do. I'm just going to go get my football lenses. And I had a 300-2.8, an old one, I was 15 years old, and I had 2X extender. And I thought, I'm just going to go sit on the porch and see what kind of bird pictures I can get. And so I did that. And this was all the first day. And, and I never really shot birds before. And I really never had any time or energy after like all the photojournalism and all the I raised, I was married 31 years and raised kids, and 3 kids, and, they're all grown now. And I didn't really ever have time to just do what I've always wanted to do, or, something fun with photography. So I started doing this, and I thought, well, this is kind of fun, it's kind of cool. It's kind of different. And I don't know, I didn't think much of it. And I took these pictures and I posted them on Facebook, and people went nuts. And it was like, oh my God, these are so cool, and we've all posted pictures, and I'll be the first one to say you can't just post for likes or anything. But I thought it wasn't the likes that got me as much as people were just really enjoying them. So I, did a little, birds here and there, but I really still wasn't doing much. And this was about the first one I got up north. I sat out on the dock a few times in the morning or at night, and that was about the first one I got. And I thought, oh, this is just the best mallard picture ever, and it's not, but it was really good for at that point for me. It was just kind of fun. I caught it, and, and then I had an assignment for Retailers Magazine. They called me up and said, we have an assignment that, how hard kayaks are to get during COVID. Everybody's buying kayaks. You can't get them anywhere. So I had to get some pictures of people in kayaks, and we have 2 kayaks up north, and I never used them once. And I'd been up there for years, 6 years, 5 years, never touched them. Had a friend, honestly, he was the videographer at CMU. He'd always say to me, Steve, they're death traps. You can't get in them. They're going to roll over. You're going to be underneath them, and you're going to drown. And I thought, okay, Adam, I won't do it. But so I never did it. And I photographed these people in the kayaks, and I got in one, and I had the best experience of my life. I left my cameras on shore, And I ran in, to my wife. I said, that was just really fun. I think I'm going to maybe get a kayak, take my cameras out in them. She's like, well, you better get a good one. So I got a nice open top kayak and I just started going out in the kayak, but I really didn't know what I was going to do yet. I didn't have any purpose. I was still shooting some birds and some scenics and some other stuff and posting them. People were really enjoying stuff. And they were, saying to me, they were thanking me. And this was like back, it almost took me back to journalism days because we brought some abuse to the forefront or whatever, but hey, you really made my day. I'm all, locked in the house with COVID and I can't get out, so you're bringing the outside to me and you're just really making my day with these pictures. So I thought, well, this is really cool that if I do this, I can make people's day. And then all of a sudden I started getting photographers, coming after me. And they're like, Steve, you're killing it. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're really making me want to get out and shoot some pictures. And so I thought, well, that's pretty cool too, to start inspiring other photographers. But I still really thought by posting these, I was going to kind of like lose more friends on Facebook than gain. I really thought people would just get tired of them. They weren't the people stuff I normally did and the events and, those moments and stuff. But I started venturing out a little bit. I thought I was starting to like birds. I went down to Kensington because I kept seeing on Facebook and I'd never got within a mile of a sandhill crane up on Torch. It didn't seem like, they were way on the horizon. I thought I was really happy to get one on the horizon. Then all of a sudden I go to Kensington and I literally sat down on a park bench and I had 4 of them peck at me, and I couldn't believe it. So that was really an eye opener to understand how many people were having access to birds, which I never had. But I still enjoyed the wild ones more, and going out. I shot this near Mansalona, just cruising around down dirt roads. But I still really, wasn't like, I was enjoying it, but I wasn't like totally into birds yet. This was at Kensington. I was quite a ways away, 401.4, cropped a little bit, but I snuck up to them behind a tree. I didn't know they'd be sort of tame, not really tame, but not afraid of me. And I snuck up within 20, 30 yards of them behind a tree and shot. And then I had everybody else just kind of walk up and they didn't run away. And I realized I probably didn't sneak up, didn't need to sneak up, but I did. But I started really enjoying the birds during the migration and out of the kayak in the fall and realizing that this was something, it was a challenge I think that I was going to have to do because number one, as a journalist, we always had to bring back pictures. We always had to bring back that A1 picture, or that picture that would fill a hole. There was never an excuse that you could say, well, there was nothing happening or there was nothing there. You had to be creative. You had to, be enterprising. You had to research. You had to do a lot of things to put you in the right spot and to be ready to take those pictures. And the birds to me were impossible. Like some of these ducks, like early morning and late night when the light was low. And it just, to me, it was a great challenge because I was seeing, and not that there's anything wrong with this, but I was seeing like every probably 5 out of 6 pictures online of birds were all sitting there. And as a journalist, I always like to catch moments and do kind of fluid storytelling and just, things on the move and capture the moments within a composition and pre-visualize sort of what things were going to look like if they ended up there or watch the light. And like this was a really dark, cloudy morning over here on the west side of the state and down by us. And the light peeked through and I saw this snowy owl from a half mile away coming towards me. And I didn't realize it was going to be so spectacular, with the reflection, but I knew it was really going to be spotlit because the light was coming in sideways. And so I was able, to be ready to capture these sorts of pictures. This is the thing I really like to do is get birds doing things. And it's just, to me, it's been a wonderful challenge. I'm still challenged. I'm still learning. I've had great success, but I'm learning that, a 4,000th of a second at times doesn't stop a bird's wing. And, I'm learning all these, like this low light, this is high ISOs. I never was able to work in high ISOs. I think this was ISO 6000 with my Fuji at that point. Almost dark out, but you're still able to get these pictures if you just brace yourself and prepare and, squeeze off low shutter speeds. I ordered a tripod head, the gimbal head yesterday. I am not a tripod guy. I'm a handheld guy. Virtually every picture you see is handheld here, either from a kayak or, but handheld 400 millimeter, 600 millimeter, 1200 millimeter. It's handheld, and for the most part. And this was a snowy owl I was watching that I couldn't believe flew towards me. And I couldn't figure out why it flew towards me. Usually they fly nowhere near you, and it flew towards me and then started puffing up. And as I got out of my car, something whizzed by me, and it was a peregrine falcon. That's when the snowy flew towards me. The peregrine circled around. I was able to get shots of it, basically dive bombing the snowy and the snowy puffing out. But to show it, what it does, how it defends itself, how it makes itself bigger. I guess the storytelling is something I like to follow through into my birding pictures too. A lot of it is just you catch the moments when they happen. It's fleeting, but you're ready to capture them. And hopefully they're a little bit artistic too. I feel like I try very hard to be artistic. It's just something all my life, you tried to make something out of nothing or something out of minimal situations, using your lenses, using your light, using, there are lots of things I think that as you elevate. I used to have a ladder. You probably can't see this. I don't think we can, there's a little ladder here. But I used to think of when I taught photojournalism at CMU for 7 years, a 500 capstone level, the last class I took. I also taught a 300 level, but I would talk how pictures get better. And, to me, the basic bottom rungs of the ladder, are things, from the ground up. As you ground up, you get better and better and better, but the bottom are basics. Like, is it sharp? Is it well exposed? Is it technically decent? Those are all things you can do with your cell phone. Nowadays it's so simple. It should be so simple to do those bottom rung things. You start climbing the rungs, does it have storytelling? Is it got a great moment? Does it have decent composition? Does it have great light? When you get up to the top of the ladder and you're starting to toddle and, going to fall off, does it have a wow factor? Does it have something that just freezes you and you just can't stop looking at it? Does it bring in your style? I would shoot birds different than anybody else out there. Any of you would shoot them different than I do. That's wonderful. We all shouldn't shoot them the same way. But I use that ladder. I kind of think of that in my head as I go through pictures. What does that have? Is it basically good? Is there some, like in photojournalism, if it had that wow moment and it technically was horrible, it didn't matter. If it was a wow, from a whatever spot news scene or something, it had news value, and that was the sort of the superseder that took over everything. It made it worthwhile. But I try to think like that as I shoot these pictures. And, does it have a little moment, or is it just a sandhill crane standing there? There wasn't any great light on this day, but if you wait long enough and you're patient long enough, the birds will end up being birds. Some things I've learned, some things I've had problems with. I don't carry, I just don't know what lenses to carry. You guys asked me that earlier. But when I go to do wildlife, like I have a 600 millimeter lens. Well, what else do I carry on the other body? Do I carry a 100 to 400 and 80 to 200? Do I carry a wide angle? Then do I have to carry 3 bodies? Do I have to carry a backpack? I don't know what to do. You know, honestly, I struggle with that a lot. And it seems like a lot of times I don't, like I don't carry all three and then I get burned. So I'm trying, that's one of my goals this year is to carry all three sort of ranges and do better at that. I also, when I'm on the kayak, I don't like to carry more than I have to because it gets really scary. These were a pair of eagles that mated in front of me at Kensington before sunrise. Not the greatest. It's ISO 12,800, but to me, this is one of those photojournalism moments where it just was I thought a really nice moment, picture, unique energy, you know, where the high ISO with the zoom, the shot with a 200 to 600 zoom lens. I shoot an awful lot with that lens. I shot both my Audubon winners with the 200 to 600 zoom lens. You know, Tamron makes one, Sigma makes one. They're beautiful lenses. I have the Sony one, but it wasn't outrageously priced. It was expensive, $2,000, but not outrageous. And I feel like I can justify a lot because I use it for my livelihood too. But I shot most of these that you've seen so far with the 200 to 600 zoom. Am I doing okay on time or?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
It's
I don't,
fantastic.
I'm
Keep
good,
going.
but I don't want to keep going,
Let me make a suggestion.
forever for your sake.
Let's pause
Pardon
a
me?
second and see if there's any questions, because it's been about 20 minutes. So does
Okay.
anybody have any questions for Steve in his
Yeah.
current spot in the presentation about wildlife and that kind of thing?
Question, how do you focus? How are you autofocus? You mentioned earlier that you were manual focusing, but on this stuff, I'm
No,
having trouble
I
imagining how you do it.
No, I totally appreciate autofocus and totally embrace it nowadays. I use back button focusing for any of you guys that shoot, you know, versus a trigger focus. I don't like it activated on my shutter. I use the buttons on the back of the camera to start and stop my focus. So therefore I can kind of move my lens and then pick what I want to focus on versus I like to have my finger on the shutter anyway, ready to take pictures. It's halfway depressed all the time. So it would just be zooming in and out all the time. So with that back button focus with Sony, there's 2 buttons you can program on the back. Canon had that also, I believe the Canon cameras I had. But I also have the camera, the lens is set so I can override the autofocus and, you know, like click if I have a tree in the foreground, I can click through with my manual focus and try to latch onto a bird that way. So I do use both, but no, my old eyes are loving the autofocus. I do shoot all mirrorless cameras nowadays. I do love mirrorless. I love how they give me the exposure preview. I love how they're a little lighter. They're just amazing tools, you know. I have never used cameras I love more, and it's not a Sony ad because I really think Canon and Nikon are just as good. But you know, I did end up going to Sony, and at the time things changed so fast. You guys probably all know that. Everybody, well, which, you know, I'm going to buy the, you know, the whatever R1, R2, R3, R5, or whatever. I don't even know which one comes out. There's so many that change and the different mounts. And the reason I went to Sony, Canon changed their mounts on me 3 times, you know, in my lifetime. Nikon's mount was the same the whole time. You know, they still use that bayonet mount, but I think perhaps it's a little different now on the Z camera. I don't know. But the Sony mount, you know, I was going to invest in some big lenses, and they were, you know, new cameras, we all know, are expensive. So I needed to upgrade my equipment for my freelancing with higher megapixels. My accounts wanted bigger files than 60 megs. And it's like, so, you know, now I'm at 140 megs or something, which are just crazy. But so I went to Sony, and I have, if anybody, I have 3 bodies. I primarily use an A1. That's my main body. It's a beautiful, beautiful camera. It's only been out a year. Does great with bird focusing and animal focusing, people focusing. I use an A9 II, which is my kind of second body, but that has about half megapixels. That's the one that was my entry camera into the Sony system that I use the most, really. I still use it an awful lot. A9 II and that 200 to 600 zoom is a wonderful, incredible combination. And then I have another one, an A7R3, which is a little bit higher megapixels, but doesn't focus as fast. And but it's a very nice camera. The viewfinders took me a little bit to get used to a Sony versus like Canon, and the say like the Mark cameras. It's a video screen now, you know, on mirrorless. So you're looking at a video picture versus a just optical. And so that's a little harder to get used to, but the A1 is a much higher resolution video monitor than the A7R3 and the others, but I love it.
Great, thank you, Steve. Anybody else have any questions?
But I'm gonna roll through. These are all, you know,
Sure.
Most of my pictures, quite honestly, I'm shooting up at torch. I gotta, you know, I mean, we'll talk later. I'm actually starting to make money shooting wildlife photography, which is interesting. This is kind of where I hope to go, you know, is to shoot more wildlife, nature, perhaps do some books. I've got some ideas. I'm working on some projects, but I got a commission down here from Friends of the Library in East Grand Rapids to document Reed's Lake for a year. The library sits on Reed's Lake for permanent display. I'm going to do images in the library. I've gotten some other, land conservancy stuff, and had some pictures in Cornell's magazine. I'm not by any means getting rich, but I'm hoping that as I retire, it just becomes a supplementary thing for me. I touched on this a little bit earlier. I've worked for different people for 35 years, and all the pictures I've ever shot, I don't have any rights to or own any of them. So I have no right to, you say to me, hey, can you make me a print of that and charge you and sell you that print? Or I couldn't sell it to a magazine and make money or anything like that. All my journalism, all my other stuff, I couldn't do that. I couldn't even, John got permission for his book. I don't even know that I could do that with my journalism stuff with my old newspaper chains. So all my life, I've never really thought about marketing or making money other than just doing shoots and getting paid for it. But now this has sort of snowballed for me in a lot of ways. We're going to get to the Audubon stuff, but I own all these pictures. I own the rights to all these pictures. I own the right to do whatever I want with all these pictures. I own the right to tell you, you can't do that with my pictures. And it's really it kind of weighs on you a little bit. You want to make potentially, get the potential out of the pictures or out of your work. And so that's where I'm at right now with a lot of my photography, is trying to sort of cross from, going higher ed and wildlife, and hopefully I'll cross the paths and I do more wildlife and less higher ed. I'm 62, so another 3-4 years of higher ed, I hope, is it. Maybe I hope. I would rather it be 1 or 2 years, maybe. I don't know. I gave up football this year. I just cannot go full force anymore. Football game with 3 lenses and big running every play and COVID, not getting anything to drink. It's just horrible. So I know the end is near with that sort of stuff, that I just don't want to do it anymore. It is work, some of this, even though it's photography. I don't want the wildlife to ever become work, and I don't think it will, quite honestly. I think I'm enjoying it, and I'm walking with baby steps, trying to make these pictures. We talked a little bit earlier, some people were on and some people weren't, but your inspiration about photos, and as an artist, we're all artists. We should, we're all artists in different degrees probably. And I don't know what degree I'm an artist in, but I do create original work. And, you know, somebody told me when I got into the birds, they started seeing my birds, you know, on Facebook or wherever it was, and said, wow, you should really think about, you know, entering the Audubon contest. And I'm like, yeah, you know, what's that? And, you know, the Audubon, you know, and I had started actually, I knew what the Audubon was. I started donating as soon as I started doing birds. I thought, well, that'd be a good thing for me to give money to every month. And so I did. Started early in COVID, you know, just as one of the things I would donate to, never knowing it was going to get to this point. And somebody said, yeah, you should enter that contest. They said, Google it. And so I Googled the Audubon contest. It's, you know, sometimes referred to, it says in the first line, the bird contest. And I'm like, oh, okay. You know, it must be a big contest. And so I started researching a little, but, you know, my friends are like, oh, you should look at this guy. He placed in the top 100 of the Audubon contest. I'm like, oh, is that good? And he's like, yeah, if you can get in the top 100, that's great. You know, one of the top 100 pictures. And I thought, okay. And I looked at the guy's work and I thought, well, it's okay. It's good. You know, it's solid. It is what it is. It's good, but it's not what I would do. And so I stopped looking kind of at other people's pictures. And I think that's the way I've been with most of my life, is just not really paying attention to what other people do, but trying to get out and see the way I want to see and capture things with that I want to see, that I want to do, and don't think I can't do it, you know, I mean, and just try to do it. But from March 2020, I have filled up multiple 8 terabyte drives shooting wildlife pictures in my spare time. And I shoot raw files. I have folders as long as our arms, you know, just lists of folders that I have not even edited yet. I've gone through, but that's how I learned. I would edit them, sort of. I would shoot, edit, see what I did, say, well, why didn't I get that? I thought I was going to get that. What did I do wrong? What was my shutter speed? What lens did I use? Was I looking at my phone instead of paying attention to the birds? I've always had to be my own toughest critic. So that's what I try to do day in and day out, is just look at the work I'm doing, have fun while I'm out there. I'm relaxing. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not trying. One of the things I have to not do is chimp at the back of my pictures after I shoot them, because usually when one group of ducks comes, another one flies by really quick after that, and I miss them if I'm looking. So I'm trying to learn things that help me become better. But the best thing I can tell you is to shoot, edit, pull out 1 or 2 pictures, good ones, pull out 1 or 2 that you wished you would have had, and look at them and say, why didn't I get that? And then you go out the next day and try again. Routinely, I shoot in the morning when I'm up north. I shoot in the morning facing east. So I have all backlit pictures in the morning. And at night, I shoot facing east, and I have sun over my shoulder, more front lit pictures. And I rarely shoot in the middle of the day. This is in the middle of the day or early afternoon. This is in the, you know, higher, earlier afternoon. But routinely, I try to shoot the last 3 hours of sunlight and the first 3 hours of sunlight if I'm up north or if I go out. I love the last sunlight of the day like this. It's just so beautiful, and you get such gorgeous, warm, you know, tones, and you get such cold tones in the shadows, and such contrast and texture in your birds. You know, I try to isolate my birds, but I try to not just, you know, again, try to get my birds doing something, like not just sitting there on the branch, but she's got a bug waiting to go to her nest to feed. Swallows have to be the toughest birds I have ever shot in my life, and I've shot probably 10,000 frames of them, and this is my favorite, I think, so far. Although I have a couple other ones. I have a couple other ones in here that are pretty nice. This is my view in the morning when I go out in the kayak. This is our little river bend right here. You know, we're about a half mile south Torch Lake on Torch River, and I've sort of my project idea, or at least in my mind as I go out to try to make pictures. I still believe every day I try to fool myself that I'm working for a newspaper. My time's valuable, your time's valuable. You know, when we go out, I want to make pictures. I want to make pictures that are good. So every day I challenge myself to just really bring home some kind of picture is what I would say. The kayak has opened up so many doors for me. Like this is with the 200 to 600 on the kayak. Right before I got hissed at and turned the other direction. I had no idea I was getting close. I was trying to paddle and shoot with the 200 to 600 zoom at once as we went across the river, and I floated kind of close, and I think I was at 200 when I shot this, which is not what I try to do. I'm very big on not trying to stress birds out or, you know, totally get too close, or I don't ever go near a nest, or, you know, I try to stay. This is a 600 from a kayak. I was over the top of cattails as this red-winged blackbird was defending its territory. This was from the kayak with 600 millimeter lens. This is from shore with a 600. One of the things I like to do is, again, bring back pictures. And I don't really care if they're birds. I like birds. I'm trying to get birds, but I try to see all the different things around me. And I think that comes from journalism too, trying to make something out of your community. My community now is wherever I'm sitting, but I try to come up with different compositions actually as I sit there and say, well, wow, that's really a great picture over there. If the birds are going to fly by, I got to keep this in my mind that there's that background right there, or there's those reeds over there, or whatever. But this was, I saw a mayfly hit the water in the morning. I was out on the dock. I had a 400 millimeter lens. And I thought, you know, I bet a fish is going to come up and eat that dang thing if I just sit there and focus on this mayfly. And I followed it, and it was about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I'm still following it and focusing. And it scared the heck out of me. A fish jumped up and I missed it. It missed the mayfly. And, you know, I gathered my thoughts again because I was kind of shocked that I was right. What I thought might happen. And I watched and I saw the movement under the water, and I hit the drive, but I got 3 photos, 4 photos, maybe, one before he came up, one when he came up, one with him totally out of the water, and one with just the rings. Actually, lots of them with just the rings afterwards. But I was able to time it because I was thinking and doing it. So I really like to come up with things like that. One night I was sitting there, I was really slow, and I saw this turtle pop his head up, you know, not 20 feet from me probably. And I sat there and I just focused on him with the, again, 400. I love to shoot. My favorite lens is probably a 400 2.8 from a kayak. I've always had long, I bought a 300 2.8 in 1981. I've always had a long 2.8 lens my whole life. And I used it for lions back in the day when film speeds were only 400, but that's my go-to probably lens. So I sat there with the 400 2.8 and I focused on the turtle head. It was a little bit away. Then I saw the mosquitoes flying around and I just started motor driving. And, but anyway, I thought this was a wonderful picture on a still night that was totally unexpected. From the kayak, laying flat, Fuji 100 to 400 with a teleconverter. Focus is really close. If you guys want a nice camera like the XT3, the 100 to 400 lens and that 1.4 teleconverter, what a great combo. Just to do some macro photography and stuff, but this is pretty much full frame with that camera. A little damselfly and the dewdrops in the morning from a kayak. But things that are around me, you know, and not just macro, but, you know, wider scenics that I see sometimes. All of these shots right here are all from my spot right by my cottage. This one night I don't know what, I just was in the yard and I saw a loon way down in the river, and I told my wife, I just grabbed my 400 and went out in the kayak. I'd never been close to one before. And so I just followed it from a reasonable distance, really, 20 yards, something like that. And it would dive. There were two of them. They would dive and come up and dive and come up. And they never caught anything that I know of. But one time he came up really, really close to me, and he wasn't bothered in the least by me. I think what I found in kayaks is birds do not seem to get freaked out like they do when I'm on land. But this is about a quarter of the frame with a 400 millimeter lens. So not real close, but really sharp. I love again, the light early in the day, late in the day is what I try to do. I followed this is one swan left out of the 5 that were on that mama's back. This was about July. Kingfisher one morning from the kayak. Loon from in front of our cottage one morning. This was Shiawassee Flats is a place I go. I don't know if anybody's been there. Shiawassee National Refuge, south of Saginaw. Nice place for migration and birds, but sunset with an eagle with a 600 millimeter. This was a swallow picture that it happened so quickly, but still kind of, I don't know that I've ever seen one exactly like this. I guess she was feeding or he was feeding the other swallow in midair, and it happened so quick, but it happened, and I was able to capture that 400 millimeter, I think. Same thing early and late. I always try in the morning to get the sun's coming straight at me, and just to keep the dynamic range, with the whole picture, the light and the dark, and not blow anything out is a challenge. And I don't know that I've really mastered it, but that day, this was during the wildfires. Remember all the smoke that gave us the hazy? So that helped. But mallard take off in the morning, immature male mallard from the kayak. I never ever realized birds. I knew they molded, but I really didn't know what that meant. But to watch the swans molt and really lose the feathers and to capture that, again, to story tell through the whole year. I love the wings down, touching the water. That's like probably my goal. One of my favorite pictures to get is that. I shoot at f2.8 an awful lot, because it's real early. f2.8, f4. I try not to go real high ISOs, but I routinely start as high as I have to go in the morning, and then keep moving it down and down and down as quick as I can. I don't shoot auto exposure. I used to. I use the programmable buttons on my cameras. I use the dial on the back. So I use this dial on the back for my ISO. So that's how I usually adjust my exposure, where I have my shutter speed and my aperture right. And then I just usually dial the ISO up and down and tweak it a little bit as I'm watching through the mirrorless. I can do it on the fly. And I don't worry too much about ISO. Quite honestly, nowadays, there's things like Topaz and different things to knock the ISO down. But I generally don't go over 8, and this sounds high, but 8,000 is what I find I don't like to go over. We have so many cloudy days, though. Sometimes you just have to. I don't enjoy it, though. I don't, that's one thing I need to master better are the cloudy days. Again, I've said this to people, I feel really silly saying it, but a bird in the hand's worth 2 in the bush. If you have a bird in front of you, whatever it is, sit and watch it for a while. I'm not a hiker. I'm not a guy that just walks down the trails and keeps walking and has to see 27 different birds today, or keeps track of all the species I see yet. That's not my thing at this point. My thing is to capture moments and bird behavior, and hopefully through time my archive of species and moments builds. But right now I've been really happy, just as I was as a journalist, in my community. What's accessible to me. If I can walk out to the edge of the river a half hour before sunrise, routinely, that's what I do. I'll try to get in place a half hour before sunrise, whether I'm in my kayak in place or on the edge of the shore and in camo. I'll sit there and, whatever I see is what I photograph, and I'm perfectly happy doing that. I try to pay attention as the light changes. And again, to see the area of the sky that was pink and capture birds in front of it. As I sat there in camo, I had a mink multiple times come up within probably 5-6 feet of me and did not know what I was in camo. And it would just come in and back and in and back and just look at me. And I got 3-4 frames of this one. This was with a 600, I think. But it came around the corner and there I was, and then left. But, from a kayak, flicker, cormorant, he swallowed that thing, but he did it away from me. But couldn't believe that. One night I saw a kingfisher land on a birch tree next to our yard up north. And he landed there and he sat up there and squawked, or she did, I'm not sure. And this is another thing I'm learning. I don't know this stuff. Birders are such great help to me. But I think that's a female with the belt, but I don't really know. It's a kingfisher, I know that. So I saw it land on that birch tree and it left. It was too dark to shoot. It was too far away to shoot. The next day I got out, I shot my river stuff, and I thought, I am just going to go sit in those trees for a half hour and see if that kingfisher comes back. My God, he came right back. I had the 600 millimeter lens and I was trying to handhold it, which is a perfect time for a monopod or a tripod or something, but I'm hand holding that 600 up and I got a whole bunch of pictures. And as soon as I couldn't hold it any longer, I started to dip it. He saw me and he left. But, again, just sitting, watching bird behavior, and then realizing there's a tomorrow most of the time, and they're going to do the same thing again. This was on Boardman Lake. This was off Torch River, a crow, very territorial. Birds are territorial. That's one of the main easiest things to capture. But I love feather patterns. This was probably my favorite picture of the year after the Audubon stuff last year that I shot new. But I was in camo on the shore. Duck came around, 600 millimeter lens, shot it. It came in, landed, saw me, took off the other direction, but never saw me as he came down. The backgrounds, wide apertures. This is an f4 lens, but the shooting wide open with the zoom even. The whole secret is to get them close enough to you that the background drops. And so that's what I try to do. This was that baby swan that we saw multiple times so far. This is him this winter. Same thing, composition, cloudy morning, flock of buffleheads. They started circling around. I thought, dang, I know that sun and the clouds are over there somewhere. I don't know where. I'm just going to stay on the buffleheads, and just being aware of, possible compositions around you, I think is important. Again, please ask questions. I'm good with any of it. I'm trying to, branch out and do a little bit other stuff than just birds. Again, as you sit there, you never know what's going to happen. Torch River, I've had a buck and also these two deer swim across the river while I've sat out there. Never have I ever seen a deer swim across that river or be in the river. And this is one of my also favorite pictures by far of the year. I shot this in the fall. Kayak. This is what our front looks like. This is where I used to sit all the years before I started doing wildlife photography and just watch stuff. But my little tree there on the right, the pine tree on the right, is where I routinely camp under. I feel kind of like a goofball out in camo all the time and full camo. And, this time of year I have bibs and a coat and a hat and everything. And I try to, it really helps to stay stationary I have a lot of stuff come right into me. There's the ice shelf that John Russell was talking about there. Doesn't freeze over though, and the birds tend to migrate. We have a lot of great birds this time of year. I had a flock of turkeys fly right at me under that tree from the marsh across the river. I have never seen a turkey over water before, and there were 12 of them, but I only had a 600mm lens, and it only lasted like long enough to get one in focus. But I thought that was just really unusual. Again, something you'd never expect. I love the snow, you know, the swans. I don't love the swans, but I do love photographing them. I think they're beautiful, and I love it when they stretch their wings like that. And they're very territorial and very angry. You know, they get angry at all the other swans and all the geese, and it's just a lot of drama, which I love, you know, for photography. Buffleheads are my favorite ducks by far. I just love buffleheads with that rainbow head. And again, I usually don't see them in the sunshine. Most of these pictures are all cloudy. I get down as low as I can too. You know, I bought a little hunter's seat that's maybe 4 inches high, you know, off the ground, but it keeps my tail end off the ground and helps my knees. And just try to sit on that. And it allows me to rotate back and forth and to get down nice and low. A lot of times I'll flop down on my belly though when I see something coming, and try to capture it. This was down at Reed's Lake from the project I'm doing. I think they were tundra swans, somebody told me. Hundreds of them. Geese coming in after dark. Same thing. I think a lot of the pictures, like I said, real early, happen either before sunrise or after sunset. And so high ISOs and just like waiting it out a lot of times is really important.
Steve?
Yes.
Yeah, are you using just the Sony glass for your telephotos?
Nowadays, mostly, yes.
Okay, thank you.
After we haven't got there yet, but after I won the Audubon, I figured I was kind of on the right track. And I ended up investing in used 400 and 600mm prime lenses.
Okay.
So it was a big investment, you know, granted. But I think whatever we shoot, you know, and I've said this, I truly believe the best camera you have is the one you have with you. You know, I've taken a lot of great pictures with my cell phone. I've taken a lot of great pictures with, you know, just a point and shoot. But in general, you have to have the kind of the golden hammer for what you're trying to do. And for me, you know, I could justify it with my work and my shooting sports and shooting some of the other stuff I was doing. And again, like I said, I had, I've always shot long lens stuff. I love to shoot long lens, so I did that. But I do love the 200 to 600 zoom for wildlife. It's a staple. That's the one I just held up a minute ago. It's on my camera right now. You know, I do love, I've got the 100 to 400. Some mornings I'll bring that out because it's a little wider where I can do a little bit more scenics with it. But yeah, all wonderful glass. And again, I have friends that shoot Canon and Nikon, and you know, it wouldn't surprise me someday Canon has an 800mm lens, Sony doesn't, that I buy a Canon body and an 800 in 10 years if I'm still into it, you know, or whatever, and it's going well. You know, it wouldn't bother me to buy that tool, even though it's a big investment. But everything would have to be going well. But I think there's a proper tool for whatever we're all trying to do. And for me, it's something long and fast for early morning and late night.
Thank you. Yeah, very good.
Again, have you guys ever seen shovelers feed before? They group up and they feed in these masses and they spin in circles, and the circles get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And they're just head down, but they spin in circles and they have these little stain-like teeth, and they filter out things out of the water. I watched that group with a 600mm lens probably for well over an hour, you know, and shot, just trying to make sense of it all. And I got 3 frames with one that busted out of the middle and came up. This is another one of my favorites, I think, from this year that I got that I just really think is unusual, but just different. But it's a shoveler, northern shoveler. This was at Reed's Lake. Bald eagle. I've been seeing a lot more eagles lately. Hooded mergansers. Another bald eagle flew right over my head. It's the first time I've got the eyes on both sides of the beak like that. Another hooded merganser. Most of the time these ducks get in close and then they realize I'm there and then they turn directions. It's really hard to get them coming straight at you, I find. And then it's hard to get sunlight up here too, in my opinion. But whenever I'm up there, it doesn't seem like I get much. But it really helps with that coloring, the iridescent coloring. And just something very simple, but like to me, what makes this picture is the top swan's head angled just a little bit to the left where it catches the light on its cheek. And I think the nuances are things that I like to pay attention to, like that with light moments. I've caught eagles a couple times going down into the reeds and pulling them up for nesting material. Flocks of ducks are difficult for me to shoot with a long lens because of the focus. If you look close at this, the ducks in the foreground are in focus, but the one right next to them are totally out. And usually it's early and late, like I said, with a long lens. So this is the golden eyes on torch, another bufflehead on torch. Full camo. I was at Reed's Lake down in Grand Rapids, and through the tree line, I saw an eagle flying towards me. So if you can stay stationary and if you can not look like a person is what I've found is the key. And I wore camo. I had a camo jacket, camo pants, but I lifted my lens up and just had it up in the air when he came over the treetops and he landed in the tree right in front of me. This was a 600, almost full frame. And he sat there for the good 2 minutes. And what I've noticed with birds is when you know that they see you, is they'll take their heads and they'll go like this. And it's something about the 3D or the vision, and they realize there's something not right, and then they take off. But that's what he did, but gave me some good pictures. Again, 30 mile an hour winds. It was probably a week ago or so up on torch, and sunlight at the same time. And I sat out for it was 10 degrees, and I don't know what the wind chill, how cold it was, but I sat out for 4 hours and just waiting to get that picture. And to me, I thought this was that picture with the windblown hair almost, or the feathers, and just the beautiful light and the iceberg in the background. And I shot this the other day at torch too. He never saw me. I was standing where I was with the kingfisher, and I saw him coming along the shore, and I just stood nice and still with the lens up in the air, and it came over the treetops, and then it looked at me and wheeled around. And but I got that. And then I shot this weekend. Just happened to be hiking on a trail, which I rarely do, and looked up sycamore tree holes. I was kind of looking at all the holes to see if we'd find an owl, and I did. And but a barred owl. 200, 600 zoom. So the main reason I feel like I have some traction, everybody loved the pictures, and that to me was really worth doing, and it still is worth doing. People just enjoy them, and I like that. I'm enjoying it. I feel like I'm finally doing something that I have a passion for, and I was having fun. But like I said, the Audubon contest, I had 4 or 5 people tell me to enter, so I did enter. I'm going to show you the little process, at least, again, the whole bird in the hand thing. But we saw this hawk, and this was down at Kensington Nature Center, in Metro Park, whatever. We were way back behind one of the lakes. So we walked about a mile and a half. It was back in the woods, but it was the first hawk I'd ever got close to. And I was walking with this guy I had met, and he was a photographer, and we did circles around the hawk for about a half hour. He said, "All right, let's go." And I said, "Really? Like, you want to go?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've got enough." I said, "He's just sitting there." And he's like, "I've got enough." I said, "Okay, well, I'll see you later." And he took off, and I stayed. And I stayed with the hawk for 2.5 hours, and just kind of watched from a distance. But as it mostly just sat there, but it puffed up and preened, and I'd never seen a picture like that before. I thought, well, that's pretty cool, the red-tailed hawk. And so I watched it until it finally took off. And it had to be a good 2 hours, middle of the winter. Just so you guys know, 3200 ISO. I don't know what my shutter speed was, but it was dark, a dark winter afternoon. And this was one of the first days I used that Sony 200-600. And so he took off, and there were another photographer was around, and I said, well, you want to go follow it? It went out of sight about 100 yards through the woods. And I said, let's just walk down the trail and see where it went. And so we did, and we got there and found it. It was sitting on the ground, and it was jumping up and down and taking the leaves, and then it would look and jump up and down and look. And whatever he was going for, he missed. And it was looking for it under there, and it wasn't moving. And so he went up, and he went straight up in the tree and sat there and looked down at it. And I still didn't really know what I was doing with this camera yet. I mean, I knew what I was doing, but it's a tool and I knew how it worked, but I'm still learning. So I'm missing stuff and I'm getting stuff. But, for the most part, I was there 2.5 hours. So I knew I had some nice pictures. But he sat up in that tree. And as we stood there, I was probably 40 yards away, not from here, but where it dropped down. I heard a squeal. It dropped down. It went backwards to me and landed on something. And it landed on a chipmunk. And it carried the chipmunk, and it flew straight at my head, like from 40 yards. I had to duck. I totally missed it. It flew up in the air, and there was a tree that was in the woods up in the canopy laying sideways. And he flew up there with the chipmunk and proceeded to have his dinner. As a journalist, you just kind of react and you shoot. And I think I still have journalism blood all the time. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just reacting, shooting, not controlling, trying not to influence anything. Staying back, again, this 600 millimeter, the zoom, and just shooting, and really not seeing maybe every moment, But I shot this, and progressively pictures that I imagine looked not so good. Got home, and I had, I don't know how many pictures, like I told 2,000 pictures, probably 2.5 hours. I don't know, trying to learn the zoom, all that, shooting lots of pictures. Doesn't cost me anything. Shoot, try different exposures, different focusing. But I got to this picture in the edit after I don't know how many pictures, and I literally stopped probably for one of the first times in my life. I didn't go any further. So I don't really even know what's after this. I do know what's after it. All tore up. But this picture struck me immediately with the emotion, and the chipmunk was dead already, but it was just that circle of life moment that I don't know that I ever even imagined until that moment. And this picture is the one that won the only honorable mention they gave in the professional division for Audubon. But it was truly one of the first pictures I've ever gone through in 40 plus years in an edit that I just said, that's it, that's my picture. This is probably one of my favorite pictures personally I've ever shot my whole life. It just was immediate, had that connection to me. And then the other one was the cardinal. And the cardinal, I actually went out towards Muskegon to shoot eagles and owls, and that's what I was trying to shoot, and hawks. And I wasn't finding any. I was pretty bummed, and I saw this hawk. I was in the car driving around rural roads, and I saw a hawk, and I pulled my car over, and the hawk flew, and it flew across the road and tail end, and all I got was tail end, and I was kind of bummed. It was really, really cold out, and I'm in my car, and I look to the right, and here's this cardinal over in the ditches, heavy snow, feeding on seeds that were protruding from those weeds, out of the tips of the weeds out of the snow. And I watched it for a bit and shot a few pictures, and I thought, okay, well, I know what it's doing now, and I know it's hungry, and I know it's trying to get food, and I know it's sitting on this weed, and there's another weed over here to the left, and I bet he's going to fly from that weed to that weed. And so I focused on it, and I literally just sat there with the 600 watching it. And as soon as it was going to take off, I was going to shoot a picture. And as soon as it took off, that was the first frame I shot, and the next one he was out of my frame, and this is full frame right here. And this is how I cropped it and entered it in the end. And but this is the one that took first place in the professional division for Audubon. So I don't think anybody had ever swept any of the divisions before. They only give out about 8 to 10 prizes a year for the actual prizes. And the photo editor called me up from Audubon, and she said, you know, well, hey, you won first place, and you know, how do you feel? And we talked, and so I'm just glad I'm sitting down. This is great. I can't even, you know, fathom. I didn't even shoot bird pictures till 6 months ago, and so we talked, and then all of a sudden she said, well, in your hawk picture won honorable mention. I said, oh, that's nice. She's like, well, aren't you more excited? And I said, well, it's just honorable mention. You know, I won first place. And I didn't realize they only had the 2 prizes. So anyway, long story short, different day, different winners probably, but that day I ended up winning. And so this has jump-started, I think, my wildlife career and opened a lot of doors for me. But I sold some, it's on the website. If you want to go, it's on my website. It's on Audubon's website. They've been promoting it. These are the winner. In the bottom right was the grand prize winner, the Roadrunner. And then they have different categories like birds for amateur bird. I had to enter as a professional bird photographer because I made money in photography. So even though it wasn't birds, but the middle picture, you know, is like birds and plants. That was the prize. And the bottom left one is probably my favorite. I love that picture, but that one won in a certain category too. So there are 4 or 5 amateur categories and 1 professional category. But so I did some calendars this year. I've been trying, people asked me to do it. I didn't know if I'd sell any. I thought maybe if I ordered 100, I could sell 50. But I ended up having to order 400, and I sold about 350. So it went really well, and people seem to like it. These were the pictures I ended up using for my first year on the calendar. And it was my first venture into marketing. And so I've had, anyway, a good support from people, and people still tell me how much they like it. And that was what I thought my reward was. So it's about all I got, I guess. Hopefully.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. I think everybody got a tremendous amount out of your sharing of your experiences and your photos and your growth, pattern that you went through as you started developing the bird photography from your journalism photography. So before we go, how can people reach you if they want to reach out to you for a calendar? Oh, perfect. And that's your
That's my Instagram.
Okay.
And my website, but my email is just steve@stevejessmore.com.
Okay,
and it's
great.
on the website. You can reach out to me through there too. But Instagram message, friend me on Facebook. I post to Facebook and Instagram. I try to do it a couple times a week, and especially Instagram. But I do Facebook too. So, and in my personal account is the one I do this on, not my professional account.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and really appreciate it. Are there any final questions from anybody before we let you go?
Nope, no questions, but amazing, amazing work and an amazing story.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm sorry it keeps going long. I don't know what to do about that. I try to whittle it down, but it's hard. So sorry about that.
You don't have nothing to apologize for. I think it was a compelling story, and it kind of all wove together. So no, don't feel bad. You had a lot of good little tips there as well for people trying to understand their gear and how to maybe improve their photography. So thank you very much.
John.
For anybody who's known Steve for a period of time, I always wondered what the next great thing he's going to do. I met him in the 80s when he was a student. You remember that, Steve? He came up and used the darkroom.
I do. I was hoping
I
you'd
think it was
hire
Winter
me,
Olympics.
but
Yeah.
you didn't.
And it's always fun to see what you're growing into next. We're very pleased and very touched by your work. Beautiful stuff.
Well, thank you.
It's amazing the turns you have to take. You know, you might work in one genre of photography for a while, and then bang, you have to reinvent yourself. And The one beauty, I think, of photography is that that's very possible if someone is really willing to do it and work at it.
Yeah.
I'm
I do
sure a
too. And
lot
I
of-
think it's important just to find something you really are passionate about. And I think I was lucky. I'm passionate about most of it, but especially this, you know.
And the other question, do you play those guitars?
Nah,
No?
I don't. I
Shoot.
I started out in rock photography and I lost my whole archive, 100+ concerts and a house fire. So
Whoa.
brings back a lot of memories. Live music's one of my hobbies. I love to go to live music, but those were some of the ones. Jack White is my favorite performer, and two of those are the ones he uses. And I always wanted a Gibson Les Paul, and that's the other one. So
Well, we share
Sweet.
something there. I was a music photographer for 25, 30 years.
it's so wonderful to see. I love to photograph creatives being creative. It's wonderful.
I have to ask, do you know Jim Lindner lives on Lake Skegamog, has his plane over there?
I don't.
Yeah, because he's probably flown over your house and we
I've
come
probably
to the
seen the
channel.
plane. Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was an avid bird photographer there in Lake Skegamog and in the marshes and stuff. So
Hmm.
for many
Nice.
years.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, I would love to join the group because I know we'll be up there a lot more if that'd be okay. I don't know. Can I do that from Torch Lake or Torch?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you in the club. I can send you a link to our forum.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're losing people and I expected that and I'm sorry I went so long, but if I can ever help anybody, let me know, questions or whatever.
Yeah, thank you very much. And everybody's
you.
very appreciative. We're getting a lot of positive comments. So thank you much, Steve, and have a great
All
day.
Thank
right.
you. I would say
Yeah.
maybe when we're back in person meeting again, we could have you back and
Yep.
do a presentation in person.
Yep.
Yeah, just even a chat session over a couple beers some night or something,
All
would be
right.
fun. Just
We'll
to
do
talk,
it.
talk. Yeah, I'd love to get to know you guys. So I
Fantastic.
know
we're
that
close.
guy. I know the top two there on the left, but I don't know anybody else. So that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Steve.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks, Rags. Great job.